and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we are doing a plant care video on Peperomia caperata. I love these plants, and here's 3 of them for you. You can see that they all have a little bit different of a leaf shape and different colors, a little bit different growth habit. The one to your right on the screen is a little more open habit. The middle one is a more moundy habit. The other one is kind of a combo in between. This is a dense forming, mound forming tropical perennial. And outdoors, it will grow bigger in its native habitat, which is Brazil. But indoors, they're very slow growing. They can, and with time, double up on this size, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But this isn't one of those plants you're going to see growing all over the place or anything like that. So they pretty much stay compact, stay really pretty. And as you can see, they have beautiful foliage. And one of the things I love about the foliage is that it's very texturized. It has a beautiful bumpy foliage, which is just gorgeous. And it's actually described as a corrugated surface to the foliage, as you can see, because it kind of looks like a corrugated metal or something like that. So it's really, really pretty and very eye-catching. The one thing I love about plants, well, I love many things about plants, but the one thing I love about variegated foliage in particular, like these are with the various color striations and colors and everything, is the various leaf forms. And when you have something that's this textural, like some of the leaves on these plants, it really makes a really eye-catching statement in your indoor garden. I do have a video on how you can decorate with your house plants, and I talk about how you can match the foliage up with things like window coverings and your sofa fabric and things like that. And these plants are really easy to do that with. They're just so pretty. And I will put a link below for any videos I mention in this video as well, including the one on decorating your home with house plants. Okay, so as mentioned, they have that beautiful corrugated surface, and actually more about that, caperata, the Latin word caperatus means wrinkled. So that's how the plants got this their species name of caperata, because of their wrinkled foliage. Now they also will create tiny whitish green flowers that are long and spike-like, so they bloom in late spring and summer. And these plants, we are in fall now, so they're just about done with that, but you can see one of those pretty flowers right here. So you can see it's really striking against the color, against this purpley burgundy color, green and burgundy color of this plant. So about a month ago, missed doing a video at that point, all of these guys had all those beautiful flowers on them. They're spiky flowers. Now some people don't like the look of that spiky flower, so you can cut them off when they come on if you don't like it. I do like it. I tend to let plants do what they're supposed to do in terms of how they would grow naturally, so I do let them grow, but you do want to prune them out as soon as they're done, because excuse me, as I always mention, any foliage on the plants that is done, that is past its time and is dying, will attract pests. So get those flower spikes off soon after they're done. Okay, so how to keep this beauty healthy, happy, looking really good in your indoor garden? Well, the first thing is lighting. So these plants one of the wonderful things about them is they can go in low light. So as I mentioned, they look really nice next to fabric such as your sofa, things like that, tablecloths. So these are plants that you can oftentimes put in areas of the home like next to your couch or on a coffee table where you may not have a lot of bright light. So it's a medium, I would call it on the safe side, go for medium light, although they can go in a little bit low light. They do need some light, but as all plants do. So one good location for these plants is a northern exposure window. So that is something to keep in mind. They will do really well as long as it's not obstructed. Now, if you have a northern exposure window and there's a building right next to it, or there's a huge tree or something, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about an unobstructed northern window. These plants are actually, I have them in a southern window, but it is an obstructed southern window where there's a tree outside that gives dappled sunlight coming in, and they do like that as well. But definitely protected from really harsh light, so you don't want any bright harsh light. Do not put them in a western window without some obstruction outside to shade it, or tree or something. And as mentioned, a southern window, the same thing. If you do have a southern western window, you're going to need to have the plant several feet away from that window if there isn't something providing some shade. Eastern windows, they do really well in that the eastern window with that early morning, the morning sun, which is much less harsh than the afternoon sun. So that's a really good place as well. Okay, they also thrive under full spectrum lighting, so that's another option. So they do really well in offices where you can put in full spectrum lighting in. They make fluorescent lights that are full spectrum. There's also there's plenty of full spectrum light bulbs that you can put in regular fixtures as well. So really easy to give these plants in most indoor environments the type of sun that they need. If you do give them too much sun, their leaves will fade out. You will get the burn marks on them. A lot of plants, the burn mark will, and I have a video on this, the burn marks will be brown, but on these plants actually kind of washes them out. So it looks like what happens when you put something out in the sun too long, and it gets kind of a bleached effect. So obviously you don't want to bleach these beautiful leaves, so keep that in mind and provide the right light and not too bright of a light. Okay, so the next thing is watering. So these plants do not like really soggy soil. If you give them really soggy soil, you are going to end up with root rot. It's just going to happen. They will succumb pretty quickly. They have a very succulent you'll see the stems and the crown. And so when you water them when the moisture meter shows 4. That's right before it gets to 3, which is very dry. And so use the moisture meter, or if your finger, you want the first inch or so of the soil to be dry. And then if you do that, you should be pretty okay in terms of keeping these plants healthy and happy in that regard and not having root rot. I do have a root rot playlist, and if you do think maybe your plant is suffering from that, and linking that below as well. Okay, so as mentioned, use the moisture meter, use your finger. You can also pick up the pot. If the pot is a lot lighter weight than it was after you watered it, it very well could be time to water it as well. But a good idea to check with the moisture meter and or your finger as well. These plants are going to cycle water like a lot of house plants a lot slower, much slower in the winter months than they do in the summer months. So definitely be careful not to overwater them in the winter months. Now, if they start to experience leaf loss, that can mean that they are getting too little or too much water. So keep an eye on that too. If you start to see some fallen foliage is fine, but if you start to see a lot of leaf loss, then you probably have a watering issue. Fertilizing. Use an organic mild fertilizer monthly, spring through fall. I always suggest using organic fertilizers because they don't tend to cause fertilizer burn. Fertilizer burn will cause leaf tip browning on plants. These guys, it will happen to them as well. It will also cause leaf loss. It will cause root dieback because the chemical fertilizer are very strong. So just use an organic fertilizer. Organic fertilizers have an NPK ratio, those 3 numbers on the front of the bag or on the bag somewhere, on the bottle somewhere, that are lower than a 10. So there are some organic fertilizers that are 10, 10, 10. Just make sure that it is organic, but on the safer side, looking for a 422, 423, 555, that sort of thing, and checking that it's organic. I do have an organic fertilizer product. I'll put the link below for that as well. So be on the safe side with it. If you're concerned about getting too much fertilizer, put the fertilizer in at half strength. A lot of times that works really well, especially for these beautiful plants. Soil. So these plants like a well-draining yet moisture-retentive soil. So you want to see a draining agent in there, such as peat moss or pumice. And you also want to see that it contains something that's water retentive, like coir or peat moss. And I think I said the pumice or perlite is what you want to see for the draining agent, and then the peat moss or coir for the water retention agent. So those are some things to look for in the potting soils that you're getting. Now, I am also putting a link for a video that I've done on making your own soil, which is another great way to have a really good soil, and some links for other soils as well to get you moving in that direction in terms of having a really good soil. Because soil is so important to the health of any of your houseplants, and especially these beauties as well. So humidity. Since these plants are from South America, they do need a higher humidity than some plants. 50 to 60% is ideal, though they can go as low as 45% without many problems. Signs of low humidity are going to be brown leaf tips, browning around the edges of the leaves, the leaf loss, that sort of thing. As mentioned, leaf loss can also be from improper watering. So, however, if you've checked and your watering is good, then it could be low humidity. Use a hygrometer. I have a link below on how to use those. They're a great tool. They show you what your humidity level is in the area that you're thinking about putting your plant, and then they will also show you the temperature. I'm going to talk about temperature in a sec here too, and the importance of that. So what you want to do is you want to use the hygrometer, see about the humidity, and if the humidity is 45% or lower, then look into ways of increasing humidity. And I have plenty of videos on that. I'm putting a link below as well for that, actually a playlist on that. And the various things you can do. You can mist. You can put them on pebble trays. You can use a humidifier, and you can also put more houseplants in your houseplant collection, because the great thing is that houseplants humidify the air around them. They release water vapor. So as they do that, they then humidify the plants surrounding them. So they will humidify each other. So go get more of the Peperomia caperata, and you will have less problems with your air being too dry, and you can test that with your hygrometer as well. So I mentioned temperature. Avoid low temperatures, any cold drafts, and even cold drafts or even warm drafts coming from vents, because that will dry out the foliage. It's not good for the plants. Now, in terms of an average indoor temperature that these plants like, it's 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is, most homes are kept around that. Move to a warmer area if it gets cooler than this, though, because as mentioned, they are tropical plants. They're not going to do well when temperatures drop below 65. They can go higher than 70 to 75, without much problem, but the lower temperatures are going to cause a problem. And as mentioned, keep them away from heating ducts and air conditioning ducts. They both dry out the air. They will dry out the foliage of the plant before the soil dries out and cause a lot of problems. As I mentioned, the flowering spikes, and as I mentioned, these are pretty white, sometimes white, off-white, cream-colored flowers that come up spring, late spring, summertime, sometimes into the early fall. And they are indicative of this species of plant and plants in this family. And you can, as mentioned, cut them off. And I'm putting a photo here right now of some of them in full bloom, so you can get an idea of what they look like, and you can see how pretty they are. So but if you don't think they're pretty, or it looks a little too messy for you, you can cut them off if you want, or just let them finish and then cut them off when they're done. Cut them off at the base of the flower spike, and that will cause them to then be ready to bloom again next year for you. And pests, last thing here. They don't have too many problems with pests. These plants is another thing I love about them. Occasionally they'll get a little bit of a mealybug problem, but you can usually get that under control pretty quickly by spraying isopropyl alcohol on them. And I do have videos on getting rid of mealybugs as well. So that is usually the only thing you're going to have to deal with them, if at all. But do keep an eye out for them just in case, and get them under control, the mealybugs, as soon as possible if you do see them. That is it for keeping your beautiful Peperomia caperata healthy, happy, looking great in your indoor garden, impressing everyone who comes over and sees them sitting on your coffee table or your end table. And they will probably want one of their own as well. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.